The clock is ticking towards the start of the OWCS Mid-Season Championship, and the picture is starting to form. And soon enough, things will appear even more clear with EMEA and North America starting their Stage 2 playoffs at the start of the weekend. Consider today's video part 1 of 2 as we take a dive into EMEA. I'm giving you a recap of how Stage 2 has gone so far, the general feeling and confidence level surrounding the teams, and my predictions on who I think advances to the mid-season tourney. And keep in mind that this time there's 3 spots up for grabs when it comes to going to the LAN, rather than 2 with the Champions Clash, so technically there's even more high-stakes matches to look forward to. This is going to be super hype, so let's just dive right into this. Let's start with an overview of the standings, where we actually have the same 6 teams from Stage 1 making it to the playoffs once again. It's just the order that has changed, and I'd argue in a big way, seeing as Virtus Pro were finally defeated and dethroned in EU, and they actually got knocked down to 3rd. In their place, Qadsiah has more than kept up their momentum from the end of last stage by going undefeated here in Stage 2 and clearly looking like the best team in the process, but also Twisted Minds had a pretty big resurgence with some pretty good changes that came with their roster as well. Aside from that, it feels pretty similar in terms of who's left, but we can talk more about them in detail in just a sec. For now, let's summarize how we got here. Starting at the bottom, we all got reminded of the unfortunate truth that not everybody gets to be a part of the playoffs. Frosttails and One Dip versus 100 Gorillas, aka Quick Esports, found that out the hard way as they're back to the relegation promotion system. Coming into the stage, neither had very high expectations. I mean, Frosttails were largely expected to be the worst team, and they definitely were. But where things got a bit more unfortunate is with Quick. Despite low expectations, they had a phenomenal start to the stage. Right off the bat, they felt like they belonged out there. And with how they were playing, playoffs felt like more than just a pipe dream. I mean, they took Virtus Pro to a map 5 and beat the Ultimates in just a couple of weeks' time and started off the stage 2-1. In the first couple of weeks, they looked and felt like a top 4 team. Dip, Zydra, Yoham, Willis, they were all fantastic. But it's never about how you start in the big leagues. It's a marathon over there. And in crunch time, they just weren't ready yet, not quite enough experience, as they'd go on to have a 4-game losing streak, including a heartbreaking loss against Peps that sent them packing. It's a pretty unfortunate end to what was shaping up to be a special story. We got this close to the first promotion team making an impact on the scene, but in the end it was not meant to be. But I think even so, they showed a lot of promise, and there's a lot of hope that they can make a comeback a reality. But for now, their story is going to end here as they gear up for another round of relegation. With that out of the way, let's talk about the actual participants, the guys who made the cut. In 6th place is Peps, a bit of a dip compared to their Stage 1 performance, both in terms of record and general play. There was concern about how this team would fare without alexyOWL and Ice in there, and those concerns happen to be 1000% justified now looking here in the present. In Stage 2, Peps lacked a foundation, something that gave them a pretty big advantage in the months prior. New players had to step up, and they just couldn't do it to the same extent as those former stars. Cookie, Tread, and Ken I think all had good moments, but it mostly came against the bottom feeders. Hell, even the teams you'd consider painfully mid were having their way with them. But to give them some respect and credit, they did clutch up when they had to in a do-or-die match against Quick. In a 5-map banger, they ended up prevailing to avoid relegation and stay here for another stage. But now the question is whether or not they can build on that momentum and actually do something with it. Was this just a one-off thing against another struggling team, or did they finally find some kind of secret sauce? Regardless of where you stand, Peps have to play a lot better if they're going to even have a chance of making EWC. But to be perfectly fair to Peps, they're definitely not the only ones facing a bleak outlook, because at 5th place was Gen.G, who are right there with them. They too faced some pretty significant changes to the lineup, and it hasn't made much of a difference so far. If anything, they're playing even worse than Stage 1. Who Are You and alexyOWL were supposed to come in and give this team a boost at DPS. And while we've definitely witnessed flashes of that, the consistency of this team as a whole is severely lacking. As of right now, this is feeling like more of a long-term investment. You're trying to figure it out now in hopes that you can put it together for Stage 3 and a shot at Stockholm. At least I hope that's the plan, because man, these guys stink at the moment. 3 and 4 is good enough to make the playoffs, yeah, but watching the path to get here has felt like walking barefoot over 100 miles of hot coals and broken glass at the same time. Painful in every sense of the word. The results of this stage are beating 2 relegation teams and Peps by the skin of their teeth. The only other thing that they have shown consistently are blowout losses to the relevant opponents. Every loss was not even close. Even the Ultimates beat the brakes off of them, and they're not very good either. Watching Gen.G play good opponents was not only painful, but boring at the same time because they were never putting up a fight. How can we have any faith in a team like this to clutch up after watching the last several weeks? It's impossible. The team lacks any kind of soul, no direction, lackluster synergy, and horrid game planning. This team could be playing so much better, but no one individual is matching their potential, and it feels like the coaching is making every wrong choice imaginable. Krusty is literally burning down the kitchen, bro. If I have to watch Mag play Devo one more time, I'm gonna do some unspeakable things. As of right now, it'll take nothing short of a miracle if Gen.G want to make the Esports World Cup. What a disappointment. And it's not even like I can escape by going on to the next team, because the Ultimates were almost equally as disappointing. I gravely overestimated their abilities heading into the beginning of the year. I admit that. And the idea of putting Skye or Twilight on main support, plus the Heesong tank swap, only further justified that this team was in a very tough situation, and Stage 2 did nothing but confirm that. You got your tank player who's maybe a bit better equipped for dive unlike KSA, but he may not be the best with the communication end, and the meta's more Orisa heavy now anyway. Then you have a support lineup that was technically the most successful in Stage 1, but they clearly have a lot of holes still. The Ultimates can't do much of anything right. And I'd say after week 1, it's felt like Kevster doing everything in his power to drag this team kicking and screaming. At times, it feels like there's no supporting cast out there, like everyone's on an island. Twilight and Heesong have had their moments, but not consistently enough to overcome this team's obvious synergy issue. It's just a poorly built roster, and at this point, we have to admit that. Just like Gen.G, they got blown out by all the teams that finished higher in the standings, and they got upset by Quick on top of it. What does this team have to show for themselves? A blowout win against Gen.G, who are arguably even worse than you are? Yeah, we're not moved around here. There is an obvious barrier that separates the likes of them and Gen.G from the teams that actually have a chance. EMEA is absurdly top-heavy, and it clearly starts with the top 3. And that all starts with Virtus Pro, who, as mentioned earlier, got number 3 in the standings. They were sadly unable to replicate their Stage 1 success as they took a couple of steps back. I mean, it's kind of hard to do better than 7-0, and I think Stage 2 is a humbling experience. The meta changes knocked them down a peg or two, I feel like. I mean, they got blown out by Qadsiah, and they had a tough loss to Twisted Minds. It has them more of a gatekeeper than a champion right now. But at the same time, they were far from awful, and they mostly played as you'd expect. This is still a really good team who's capable of taking home first place with some better preparation. I would not count them out just because they had a bit of a down stage. They're proven, I think in some cases you'd argue well experienced, and they do have a pretty well constructed roster. Star players on DPS, consistency that you need on support, and a pretty versatile tank line with the addition of IceNam. He's become well suited to his new home, and he provides a good backup plan when certain hero bans or map picks come into place. If they come back and they get first place, I don't think anyone should feel surprised. It's just that right now the meta isn't quite as favorable as it once was. I think going away from Mauga and having a bit more variance plus other teams improving has made things a bit tougher for them, but at the end of the day, they don't even need to play their best to make the Esports World Cup. With 3 spots available, they just have to maintain the course. And knowing how some of the other teams are playing right now, that shouldn't be all that hard. right? Coming in at second place in the Stage 2 qualifier was Twisted Minds. This org continues to prove why they're one of the best out there in terms of longevity, with yet another resurgence in the face of adversity. Whenever this team's in a serious jam, or you start to question if they have what it takes anymore, they almost always respond. Stage 1 was not what they wanted. The Hottie experiment blew up in their faces, and Irony wasn't quite the right fit next to Funny Astro. Their solution was to bring Qadsiah home to solve that tank issue, and try their hand at another Korean import at Flex Support with Simple, and so far it has worked like a charm. Instantly, they have looked and felt way more like the team we have grown used to watching over the last 3 years. A skilled player with proven leadership qualities and an elite Ramatra has been everything this team has needed and more in a brawl-centric meta, and just having him in TVNT offers a lot of versatility. The key was to fill in the holes for this team, get a few more guys that can hold their own, and now they finally have it. It finally feels like just about everybody is a threat, which means that opponents can't just focus in on Quartz anymore. That was the main problem in Stage 1. You bully Quartz and the rest of the team kind of just collapses. But now that strategy isn't so simple anymore with all the other guys you have to worry about. Plus, Quartz has a lot more room to operate with a better team around him, plus less dive heroes constantly in his face. It's the ideal setup for Twisted Minds. This is their kind of meta. A 6-1 team that can even stand up to Virtus Pro is a far cry compared to Stage 1. This team has played brilliantly so far this stage, and there's a real chance for them to advance and maybe even take home first place in this tournament. They aren't number 1 just yet, but that chance could come as soon as this weekend. They are so back. But unfortunately for Twisted Minds, they still have to try and get through Qadsiah, who dominated their way to first place in an undefeated stage. Now, this is a team that capitalized on their momentum, took what they learned from Stage 1 and got better from it. They were surprisingly good in Stage 1, even making the Champions Clash along the way, but they showed zero satisfaction. They've learned and gotten even better. They gained confidence from close matches with Virtus Pro, and even taking a map off Falcons, and look at them now. Only 3 drop maps in a total of 7 games. That's domination right there. This team applied what they learned and then some. The progression in such a short time is inspiring. Before, it was about just seeing if the pieces could stick with this team, if certain guys could be relied on, and now all of a sudden, they're mostly all some of the best players at their respective positions. It's one thing to witness Checkmate and Landon do well, that's expected, they've done it before, but it's a totally different story to watch Labda and Ziad dominate the way they have. It goes to show why Junkbuck is a legendary coach. This man knows how to squeeze every ounce of potential out of promising players. For a while, it was uncertain whether a guy like Ziad could hold up on a non-Mauga comp. That was all the team ever really played in Stage 1, but here in Stage 2, he has continued to thrive and is still one of the best tanks in EU. Then you have Labda on the other hand, a man primarily known for just playing Pharah on Twisted Minds with not much of a history on Hitscan to speak of. But here he is, just casually waltzing in, being arguably one of the best Hitscans in the region right now. He's finally gotten the chance to spread his wings, and it's been immaculate. Qadsiah have gone from the fun underdog to a well-oiled machine, and I'm not sure if anybody in EMEA even stands a chance currently. The level of play plus the comfort in this meta spells trouble for the rest of the region, no doubt about it. It'll take nothing short of playing perfectly to beat them as it currently stands, and I'd say until proven otherwise, they should be the favorites. And there's a summary of how the stage has gone and my general feeling on all the teams. So now let's get into the famous ATP predictions, which are just always so perfect and never ever age poorly, right guys? So over the next 2 weeks, we've got 6 teams aiming for the top 3. Same format as Stage 1, but with an extra slot available in terms of advancing to the LAN. Top 4 seeds start in the upper bracket, bottom 2 in the loser side. In terms of how I see this thing going, I'm going to go ahead and lock in Qadsiah as the winner of the tournament. They're the favorites, and I'm not going to go against them with what I've seen. And I believe they'll likely play Twisted Minds in the finals, with Virtus Pro rounding out the top 3. Those three should be going on to represent their region in the Esports World Cup at the end of July. With the dominance on display and the comfort in a methodical meta like this, I think that Qadsiah just have to be the clear-cut choice. I really like riding the hot hand, and I think with the experience from last stage on top of it all, plus the notable improvement, it just makes them the right pick. They've improved as individuals and as a team compared to last stage, and the meta is arguably right where they want it. You still have a super tanky, survivable hero for Ziad and Orisa, and the Sojourn hit scan setup for Labda. But now Landon is arguably even more OP now that BAP is gaining relevance in the current metagame. He's able to generate so many plays in this current setup, and that's not a luxury that many other teams have in EMEA in terms of their supports. And with a more seasoned veteran at main support now in Kelix, Qadsiah are sitting pretty. The intensity is going to increase, and maybe they won't be as dominant as the qualifiers, but for me at least, it's hard to see anybody really pushing them in their current form. Twisted Minds and Virtus Pro are the only teams that even stand a chance, and even those guys right now kind of feel like they're facing a small gap. This is a deadly combination that'll be super hard to break up. In my opinion, it's going to take nothing short of a JWoo masterclass or Twisted Minds being able to impose their will with the Ram comp to win. Qadsiah are going to be tough to beat, man. I mean, pound for pound, they can match up with anybody. With how Ziad has improved, Labda arguably being one of the best DPS in all of the region, with Landon having both Kyrie and BAP at his disposal, that's a pretty nasty combo, and I don't think anybody's beating it personally. I'm honestly a bit more interested to see how a VP versus Twisted Minds rematch goes. It's two teams that excel in very similar ways, and they both have found success in recent memory. But when you evaluate both sides, I'd say at least historically that one has a tendency to bounce back in the face of adversity better than the other. You can never seem to keep Twisted Minds down no matter what year it is. Quartz, KSA, and even UB have done it many times together, while Funny Astra and Psycho did it a lot last year on SSG. That experience factor could be huge here. I expect them to deal with their shortcomings maybe a little bit better than Virtus Pro. They have that mental edge, a more resilient group, if you will. I don't know how Virtus Pro and that group of players will handle the pressure when things don't come easy. When the matchup feels even, it's that mental game that it comes down to. And in the face of pressure, I feel like Twisted Minds are maybe slightly more likely to execute because that's what a lot of their players are known for and have done for years now. This is a very different Twisted Minds compared to a couple of months ago. KSA plus the correct flex support in place, with Quartz and Psycho finding a rhythm, plus the UB sim in the back pocket as well, I feel pretty good about their chances of getting second, or at least beating Virtus Pro. But no matter what happens between these two teams, I highly doubt either of them or Qadsiah will be struggling with the other teams I mentioned. Gen.G, Ultimates, or Peps. I don't know if any of them can even force a map 5, let alone win a game against them. They all have a major flaw that clearly separates them from the top guys. Peps lack the stars, Gen.G can't get out of their own way, and the Ultimates don't have the synergy. If you don't have your fundamentals down, there's not even a conversation that needs to be had. This is clearly a 3-team race, and it just depends on the order more than anything else. If any of these 3 don't make the LAN, I would be genuinely shocked. But yeah, that pretty much does it for my thoughts on EMEA. Let me know who you think advances in the comments below, and please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel for more OWCS predictions just like this. Peace out.